Hello, welcome to Doom Mixtape. I am Liz Ryerson, your host. This is map 13 of A.L.T, Alt, otherwise known as .wad, released in 2012 by Clan BOS. This map is by Azimail. This map is what they call a tech-based theme. And actually, because this is going to be the last Doom mixtape, at least for this year, and for the indefinite future, because I'm going to put it on hiatus, I wanted to talk about other things that are not just this map. So let's get this map out of the way. It is a quote-unquote tech-based theme. It is in a odd place in the map set, because it's map 15 is the middle of the Doom Megawad. So this is right before it, and it's coming after a lot of, there's a very big map 11, which a lot of people like a lot. Is not one of my favorite maps, but has a lot of interesting spaces. And basically what happens in map 11, it's called Recall, and your character is going through these kind of very strange spaces. You're being warped. You start in this big cavernous area, and then you're warped back to different, like, more realistic locations, quote unquote, that are becoming more strange. And then eventually things break down and become ultra weird, and then you're sent to this next set of maps, map 12 through 14, which are ostensibly more usual Doom map or more quote-unquote normal themes, but there's something off about them. Map 12 is more conventional in terms of the way that it is laid out, but the detailing and stuff is very strange. And then once you get into map 13, which is this map, and map 14, but especially this map, your relationship with this game has totally changed, and the way that you move through the space has totally changed. You're in this massive, massive areas of empty space that are sort of, I don't know the right word, but they're emphasized, whatever, by these small areas on the side. And most maps you go through, you pick up a few keys and then you go to the exit. This map doesn't work that way. I picked up the red key very early on because there's a third way you can go from the beginning, where you can do that pretty shortly. But you don't really need the red key. It helps you go through some doors, most of which are pointless doors that just lead to brick walls, literally lead to brick walls, and then one that does lead you to the exit, but you can pick up the red key in a few other places in the map as well, including in the red key door. I have no idea why. I suppose you don't actually need to pick up the red key before entering that door, because there is an area that teleports you to there. And there's a very long path that feels like it's the critical path of the map that is actually just a very large secret. But it has a lot of these strange details and stuff that you would expect, that other maps of the set have, and you would expect to be part of the normal progression. So what you actually have to do to beat this map is you have to activate these portals that are these little platforms that you hit the switch down and then run over. Here's a red key door that leads to a brick wall and an imp. Seems important, but is not. And those areas only appear as you've gone through spaces. So you might go through the map in, trying to go through, figure out where you need to go and everything. You might be wandering around, and you haven't even gone through over a single one before you've gone to all these areas, because they appear afterwards. Here there's this big crushing ceiling that you have to make it through, and the only way that you can get through it is to hit one of those switches. You have to hit the right one. one of them activates revenants who will come down, but also a invulnerability sphere, which I'm going to pick up shortly. And you notice how I went straight from the beginning. I usually go left, which leads here, or sorry, right, which leads here, because the path on the left, which I'm going to go later on in the map, is just a little bit too crazy to start out with. So if you're playing this map, definitely don't go that way to start out with, unless you have a bunch of weapons and stuff. I like the big open spaces of this map. I like how the spaces are the relationship with each other, because in a lot of strange Doom maps, let's say, you might be teleporting around to a bunch of different abstract sort of spaces, like in map 6 of A.L.T, Sanctuary, which I did a video about. There's a lot of teleporting around, and there's a lot of really cool spaces, but there's something about the fact that ostensibly this is a conventional sort of area, but the way that it's actually laid out makes no real sense. And if you look at it from the surface, it's still very weird, but it's not at the point where things have gone down into full abstract hell, where you're being moved around and you don't really know where you're going, and it's become this bizarre arcadey hellscape. Here you're still in this ostensibly normal space, but your relationship with it has been completely changed. This is the first of the switches that you have to hit and walk over to unlock the ending of this map. And the ending of this map will send you down a big toxic pit into the next map. So it's basically a two-parter. I think this first part is better, but obviously you should play this, because I think the most important thing is that this is played and not me talking about it. Because particularly this map set is designed with there's a David Lynch quote. So this reminds me a lot of David Lynch in a lot of ways, but a lot of people use that, say something feels like David Lynch, and without really, even if it doesn't, or without really describing why. But dreamlike is one easy way to describe it. But what David Lynch said is, I like to remember. It's a quote that's in a David Lynch movie that a character says, but I think he has also said this quote. I like to remember the things the way that I remember them, not necessarily the way that they happened. So, think about playing video games growing up or whatever, and you have memories of very strange spaces or something, but your memory is kind of sketched out, and you don't remember, okay, here's another one of these things I have to activate. And you don't necessarily remember what the details of the experience, but you remember these strange abstract feelings, and then you might have a dream about it or something, where you're going through and things like the switches just don't make sense, and it doesn't work like a normal video game would, or it doesn't work like a normal movie would, or whatever. This is one of the few sets that I feel like is designed towards that. It is designed to be dreamlike and to capture that subjective experience. More so than almost anything I can think of. And that's one thing that people might not understand about the Doom mixtape thing, is that this isn't about just good Doom maps, quote unquote, but this is about things that I've found in the community that I think represent something new or different. And there have been other people out there. There have been plenty of other maps out there that have tried the narrative or the dreamlike thing. One set it actually came out the same year as A.L.T. It's called Hydrophobia. I think they probably were not, aware of each other. But I'm not a huge fan of it. The ideas behind the story are good, but it's nothing like this. And what makes this like this is just every single moment there is something happening, and there's a way in which your relationship with the space is being changed. the way that you're fighting enemies is being changed, the way that the spaces are constructed, the way that you move through them. There's just everything. And because of that, I would say it very much breaks down the idea of, like, a lot of people think that I might try to advocate for weirdness or differentness or whatever, and that's only a very small part of it, and it can be very misleading to say that it's just about weirdness. Because the thing is, weird is just a kind of a made-up, subjective term. What this is it is capturing a feeling which can only be captured through this audio-visual, spatial medium of games, in a way that it's really reductive for me to even try and describe it. And I can offer suggestions, but I can't really summarize it in a way that would really tell you exactly what it is or how it's valuable outside of you playing it. So I think that's a thing that people need to understand, is that stuff like this is very rare. It doesn't exist very much in the world, but when it does exist, we should talk about it and emphasize it. But not everybody's going to be able to go out there and make it. I think the most important thing is not just to be aware that stuff like this is out there, but to be open so that your personal sense and your personal radar is able to capture kind of stuff like this, not only in things that you might discover, because it is a lot of effort to go through to discover strange things, and I feel like I have put myself through a lot trying to do that, instead of focusing on things that are really important, like making my own stuff. It can be very easy to get hung up on advocating for things instead of actually going out and doing it yourself. And whether or not people will pay attention to that, I think it's good. I mean, a lot of people don't like this map set. A lot of people have said it's shitty. I mean, I obviously think they're wrong, but that's a risk that you take. And I think the more strange and different and really almost, I don't know, life-changing a thing is, the more it's going to evoke responses like that. So it's always a risk that you take. And that's why I think a lot of the most popular things, people ask me, why don't you talk about X set or Y set? That's why I think a lot of the most popular things, they just aren't that interesting in my mind. It's not that they're not good as far as good as a Doom map set goes. Like, it's fun, and there are some kind of cool spaces or whatever. And that's fine. I don't want to trash people who do that stuff or like that stuff. That's not the point. The point is, I have followed this thing for a long time, without necessarily being first-hand involved for the most part. And there are a few things out there that I think are illustrative of something different, something that I'm not seeing in independent games or really anywhere. And again, it's not about an aesthetic or whatever, but it's about expanding your horizons and considering something different. And I think the reason why Doom has allowed these things to even exist is because it's been around for so long. Somebody messaged me recently and was like, it's very interesting that all this stuff exists because, and this community is still active because stuff like Half-Life 1 modding or Quake 2 modding, a lot of first-person shooter games from the late 90s were extremely popular, but they're not active anymore. And, without a source port like Z-Doom, or without the source code being released to Doom, which led to things like Z-Doom existing, without a tool like Doom Builder, and without a big modding community that exists in a lot of different countries, and is an outlet for, and without the game being extremely popular, without it being a place where you can make fairly detailed environments still relatively simply, none of these things would exist, especially on this small scale, because the ecosystem of video games means that something like this just doesn't exist. Like, there is way too much concern with things being materially justifiable. And so a thing like a Doom mod makes this possible. It doesn't make it necessarily likely. It doesn't make it imminent, but it makes the thing possible. And it makes it so that somebody is able to go out there and use that and do it. So it's not necessarily about Doom insofar as Doom is only a good venue for it. And yes, I'm obviously a fan of the game, but saying I'm a fan is kind of reductive. It's not about being a fan. It's about having a medium for something different. This is the exit area that I'm going to need to make sure that all those blocks go down, and there are 5 of them. But I walk over 6 platforms, so I'm not sure what the 6th one does. But who knows? I might actually have to look at the editor for that. This is a big central hub area. So I don't want to really talk anymore about the map because you've gotten a sense. There are some things that really are best remarked upon or observed when you observe them yourself, because there's just too much stuff to point out. It's very rich, and I think that richness is really important. What makes it really important for you to kind of discover it yourself. But I do realize that in these days you have to kind of compromise, and you have to present something, and you have to give a little bit to people just so that they're aware of it. But in the end, I think you need to do the work as an individual. And in the online content sphere, I mean, I've talked about this many times before, there's not very much emphasis put on the user or the audience doing much work. The audience has become this thing that is immensely catered to. And I'm in a position where I'm doing that as well. Like, I'm catering to people in some way by presenting these videos, instead of just linking to it and expecting, or writing a little quick write-up and expecting people to be able to go through and really experience this. But it is also necessary because creative work, as far as in my opinion, is not necessarily good, and a lot of stuff is destructive. Maybe not intentionally so, but if you're spending a lot of time moving through a Doom mod where there's just a lot of shit happening and it's very repetitive and not very stimulating, that can be really draining, in my view. I mean, I don't know. That's how I approach it anyway. Excuse me. I find that stuff very draining. And it's hard for me to see the value of it. I'm not making a judgment on people who, enjoyment is a thing that is very subjective and dependent on your state of mind at the time that you're enjoying it, and who you are, which is partly defined by that as well. This looks into a secret area that I'm going into later. But it is the world out there. There is some stuff that is very, very healing, and there's a lot of stuff that is very toxic. And so that healing stuff becomes even more important, to where, you do have to put a lot of effort into it, but the effort that you put into it will be returned back to you, maybe even tenfold, but you have to be able to put in that effort to get it back. And there is no emphasis on returning that effort these days, and all I can say or do isn't going to get people to do it. You really have to do the work yourself, and it's not about like the weirdness, the strangeness is not about an aesthetic. It's not about something that can be defined by a checklist, or that I can really break down in the way that people want things to be broken down in the video game contentosphere. It's something that you have to be able to experience subjectively and experience for yourself. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not going to be able to see it. And so it's probably not going to look very valuable to you. And that explains so much of why things are the way they are, which is why it's important to have your channels clear and to be able to recognize when something is, when there's energy behind something, when something appears to be going somewhere, and to follow that. But it's very hard. I mean, I really want to invest time in stuff that I think is the most important, and I invest a lot of time, particularly in music, in trying to find stuff that I think is really interesting and different. But sometimes the thrill of the hunt, I guess you could say, gets more important than actually sitting down and really enjoying and appreciating something's nuances. And I think that's the sad thing, because it's important to keep going back to the things that you love and discovering new things and really understanding why they're important. And like going back to the David Lynch quote again, it's okay to enjoy stuff. It's okay to enjoy complete trash, you know? A lot of the articles that I've written on both Doom and Wolfenstein 3D in the past have been so much about subjective experiences. And I think those are, especially in the realm of video games, but in most media, oftentimes a lot more deep and important than the actual media itself. And they might be validating of it too, but they're also kind of complicating it, or putting in a part of yourself into the things that you make. I mean, I've said this before on Twitter, but I think like a lot of entertainment and entertainment culture is based around spectacle, and the idea with spectacle is that that something is constructed that is intentionally something that is inaccessible for a normal person to make, like a huge Hollywood movie or a huge music video production where there are 8 outfit changes of the pop stars. You know, that kind of thing is not a thing a normal person can do. And that thing has become such a religion, so important, especially in the age when creative media is so successful. And we need to deprogram ourselves from that excess and that spectacle. I think it's so important. But it really is like a cultural religion, and so many people are unable to see the ways in which it defines the way we experience things and the way that we make things. So, and the only thing that you can do to get out of that is not like listen to a person tell you about why it's bad, but to open yourself up and to clear your own channels. That kind of thing is very needed and very required when you're entering into a very complicated and strange new zone that something like this is. And there are very few people who are really able or capable of doing it. So I try and do it as best as I can, but I understand that this is also draining on me, because there's only so much I can say about this stuff. I can advocate and try and be there and say all this insightful whatever, but if people aren't going to pay attention, it's not going to matter. And it's not necessarily whether it's people's responsibility to or not. But the fact of the matter is that in the end, like, it's taking emphasis away from me, and it's draining me in such a way that it's making it hard for me to explore my own sort of creative work, and it's making me feel like it's not worthwhile when I see stuff that is really cool that doesn't get it attention that it deserves or is derided, it makes me feel like it's not worth trying to pursue that. And that's a shitty place to be in. So I think that my reaction to that is, well, first of all, to say, like, okay, this has reached a point where, you know, I've done what I can do with this, like, project, so it's time to put it aside, and move on to something else. I'll wait till I get around these guys. I only ended up getting like 69% kills in this map, which is, I don't know where a lot of the guys missing are. Probably in a few of the really big rooms that I skipped out on. But anyway, so I'm thinking of starting a new project. Well, I am starting a new project at the beginning of next year, where I record interviews with different people in different areas of expertise, some video game related, some digital art, new media, that kind of stuff, and essentially to where it's accessible to people who don't follow this stuff, can, you know, get what the gist of something is and have an entry point into it, because I think that's so important. I've said it a million times before, but there are so many sub-communities and subcultures on the internet that are intentionally inaccessible to people on the outside, including the Doom community and including a bunch of other things. And oftentimes, a lot of the stuff that is the most emphasized or well-regarded in those communities isn't necessarily at all the stuff that's the most culturally valuable. It just might be made by the most popular member of the community, or it might be the most, in a Doom modding community, it might be the most downloaded, or it might be the most viral, or in the indie game community, it might be the one that sold the most copies or whatever. And that isn't really related to how its value as a work of art. It might be valuable as a work of art, but that's independent of most of the time of the recognition and stuff things received. So you kind of have to take it in stride. And I want to introduce people into this world, partly because, you know, I've been trying to get out of doing video game stuff. And, you know, I'm never going to completely get out of it. That's what I've decided. But I've definitely quit being a, you know, only video games person, or having that be my primary identity necessarily. And I'm, you know, trying to take a break on getting involved with video games events and things like that. But but the idea is just to broaden perspectives, and you know, I moved to Portland recently. I was living in the Bay Area in the East Bay for several years, like 4 years, and you know, trying to get more involved in the arts community and stuff. And I've finally met some people, but you know, I've had a little bit of a hard time. I haven't been here that long, so you know, it might come in time. But the thing that I've noticed is a lot of people, they don't have online presences, or they don't have Tumblrs or whatever. They don't put their art online. They don't necessarily put their music online. They don't use Twitter or whatever very much. And I think it's kind of a mistake in some ways. Like, some of that stuff can be really toxic, and I understand why people don't use it. But at the same time, there's a kind of technophobia, or this like strain of Luddite where people think they'll become less of a true artist if they sully themselves with the realities of the digital world. And I think that's completely insecurity and fear. And I like, one of the things I like about the video game community is that, and other online digital art communities, is that stuff is accessible. And you know, you can look on someone's Twitter, you can look on someone's Tumblr, you can get a sense of their work, you can message them, even if they don't answer all the time, because they get a lot of messages. Hint, hint. Yeah, I'm at the point where I get too many messages to where I feel like I can adequately answer them, and I'm not even super famous compared to a lot of people, so yeah. But where was I going with that? A lot of these people have a fear of it, and I think that fear is maybe in some ways justified, but it's sad because I think that kind of accessibility is important. There's a kind of accessibility which is very overrated as far as like, I've thought about, well, maybe I should make a YouTube video that's experimental instead of a game because it's more accessible to more people to do experimental video or experimental music. And the thing is, like, if I put it online, it might be more accessible for someone to watch it on YouTube, but does that mean that anyone's going to go and watch it? Like, probably not. There's so much stuff out there these days. And if it's any degree of challenging, it's always going to be at an inherent disadvantage. So you might as well make the things that you want to make, and then if it gets no attention, then at least you're happy with it and you don't feel like you've compromised. Because there are really, like I don't know how many times I can say this, like, don't listen to people's bullshit advice about marketing your content or whatever like that, unless they are somebody who you really like and who think that is doing something really good. Don't listen to people's advice about that shit, because people don't know. And if they do know, a lot of people have sold their soul to make stuff that is boring and compromised. And those aren't the people whose advice you should follow. This is the big secret area that I'm fond of. I never really went here before this, so it's nice to discover. And it's nice how this map gives you a computer map, but this feels like parts of other maps in this set, which is why it's interesting that it's a secret area. So yeah, we'll see how the podcast goes. I'm emphasizing talking about particular issues instead of emphasizing the individual, because I feel like my problem with a lot of podcast websites and things like that is it says, okay, we're interviewing X person, and if you don't know who X person is, then there's no incentive to care about the content of the interview, and a lot of it is inaccessible. So I'm not saying it's going to be completely accessible. Like one of these first two interviews I did, I had to keep asking the person to explain what everything is, and I don't even know that I like that toxic zone, because it's not a part of the map, it's a different space. But it's a hard thing to do, but hopefully at least making the effort I'll get somewhat there. And I don't know if it'll be popular or not. Probably not, honestly. Like maybe if I find the right avenue, but knowing video game people, they're probably not going to be interested in it for the most part, and that's okay. Like I have my Patreon, I'm gonna make that more of a central part of my Patreon, and then make the art that I'm making be more my own kind of thing, so that it feels like there's a boundaries between those two things, because that's important to me. I mean, I appreciate anyone who does pay attention, and but yeah, I don't know, that the intent here is to kind of provoke people to say, okay, this stuff is not stupid, it's interesting, there's interesting stuff out there, but there's also a lot of crap out there. There's also a majority of crap out there, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't close your eyes to it. It's there, it's always there. And not a lot of people like to talk about it for whatever reason. And everything gets lumped in with each other. Like everything in a particular community gets lumped in. Like everyone lumps in OC remixes. OC Remix was a video game music arrangements website that I was on. I've talked about before. I was on back in high school, and they're still around. But everyone lumps in the 3,000 or so OC remixes together. Everyone lumps in all the Doom mods together and Half-Life 2 mods and stuff. So, and that's pretty silly. Everyone lumps in all vaporwave, or I don't know, just like anything of a particular glitch art. That's another thing. Because that's another very broad, area of media, whatever. So it's important to look at these things respectfully, but that's only really the first step. You have to be able to like look at something with a clear eye. And I don't think that, like I said, this isn't an aesthetic. This isn't about aesthetic. This is about making something that, using your intuition to make something that is different and interesting. And I feel like that's the sort of way that we need to communicate more and more, because that's the kind of thing that subverts particular aesthetics or ideologies or things that are marketable, is having that more nonverbal, intuitive kind of discussion that happens in a more abstract way and over a longer period of time, and isn't just feeding these sort of cultural myths and ideals that are fed by social media or by things that are written to be clickbait, or things that are super commercially popular and become the dominant kind of definers of the culture. And I think it's capable of happening, and I will certainly do more to make it possible, both within myself and within other communities. But in the end, people have to do it for themselves, and people aren't going to be open if they're, if people aren't open to something, they're not in a state where they can be open to something, then they're just not going to be, and they're not going to get it. And a lot of people just don't get it, and it sucks. It sucks to me, but that's just how the world is. And it's something that's important to like recognize. It's not a negative thing inherently. It's just makes the possibility space even bigger. I like this. I mean, I compare a lot of things to David Lynch because I'm a big fan. And this set I definitely compare to like a David Lynch movie, or just that kind of surreal, dreamlike thing. But David Lynch also has this video that I was watching recently saying, keep your eye on the donut, not the hole, which I think is good advice. Like, it's too easy to get sucked into the despair, to follow every single bit of news and media, especially if you're on Twitter, which I know a lot of people who are watching this video probably are, because that's like where my primary like online presence is right now. It's easy to think that the world is ending and that everything is horrible, and but the world, everything is always, reality is always extremely complicated. There's always stuff happening, whether you read about it or not. And so, our awareness of it might be more complicated, but in the end, like, that stuff is always happening. So the important thing is to do your own thing, to be who you are within your own space, to be intuitive and be empathetic, and try and move through whatever space that you're in the best way that you can, and not get too hung up on things outside of that, because in the end, like, there's all the darkness or whatever that exists in the world, but there's so much positive that exists too. And if you're not able to see that, then you miss a huge percentage of what exists out in the world. It's too complicated to be broken down in this way where you can say, like, okay, these are the issues that are affecting the world. There's so many issues. The way that you can explore that intuitively and abstractly and in a way that doesn't reduce it is to be nonverbal, to try something different, to communicate through images and communicate through symbols and things like that. Yeah, here I'm at the end. And I don't know. Like I said, there isn't really much else I want to say about this set. You really should go check it out. I came back to this level after doing map 22, because I think this map is pretty singular, and it's so big, kind of represents its own thing to me. So it's a good signpost to to end this series at least temporarily. I've been very frustrated doing this series just because frustrated with myself, really, but also with, you know, the relative lack of disinterest outside of a small group of people, and that is really, it's just how it's just the way that things go. It sucks, but it just emphasizes more that I need to spend my own time on more time on my own creative work and stop trying to push other people's work to the surface, because I'm doing it to the best of my ability and it's draining me really intensely, and it's making me feel like, you know, I get so hung up on thinking that people are misinterpreting what I'm saying, and of course they are, because people, that's the thing that people do. People like to misinterpret things and to assume things, especially these days when emotional reactions get so defined as, like, you know, people's entire perspective. So it's gonna happen. The best thing I can do is move on and find my own voice. And yeah, so you'll be seeing more of that. You'll please check out my podcast, which is it'll be at ellaguro.com. I haven't figured out a name yet, so but I will in probably about a week from now. I like the music in the set. I've said it before, but the music does a good job of capturing the strangeness of the set and did a good job of highlighting to me that this was very intentional. I hope that this is something that can expand your horizons, as I feel that it has done for me. In a way that is totally sincere, but also beyond any kind of verbal expression or description. I hope that it's allowed you to be more open to these things. I hope you're able to consider something that you might not consider before and expand your awareness of the world. I hope that you'll tune into my podcast. I hope that you'll continue to follow my other creative work too. Like, I've been meaning to make more music, and I'm excited to do that in the new year. I think things are finally starting to turn around a little bit, but we'll see. And I think it's important to finally close this chapter. I think you should play the rest of this set, particularly this map 14. Well, not particularly, but just this map as far as any others. You usually start out with 1% health. I don't know why I'm not starting out with here. But yes, I hope you had wonderful holidays. And I hope you will continue to follow my work. Twitter at ellaguro. Goodbye.